Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. So nice to see you guys. I'm just going to go ahead and give a quick startup presentation to introduce you to PHS and all of our opportunities if you haven't been to one of our shadowing sessions before. So Pre-Health Shadowing is a student-led, minority-led, women-led nonprofit dedicated to helping prospective healthcare students gain access to educational resources, no matter where they are, their abilities, or their demographic status. My name is Allie, and I am the volunteer coordinator here at Pre-Health Shadowing. Thank you all for attending today, and let's go ahead and get started. So a quick PSA, we do have closed captioning for all of our sessions to accommodate all of our students. This setting is available on the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you need assistance enabling this transcript, go ahead and direct message me or one of the team members. We're always looking to be more inclusive and ensure that our sessions are accessible. So if you have any recommendations for how we can be more accessible, please email us at info@prehealthshadowing.com. Since we are an international program, we love hearing where you guys are calling in from. And we actually would love if you would introduce yourself in the chat. So maybe say, what year you are in school, where you're calling from, and maybe what your career goals are if you know yet. If you want to stay in the loop with Pre-Health Shadowing, you can follow us on social media. We're active on Instagram and TikTok. You can also sign up for our email list on our website so you never miss one of our sessions. We have some wonderful opportunities for you as being part of our program. So we have partnered with Kaplan to get our students a 10% discount code that can be used on all Kaplan products, as well as free resources like study guides to help prepare you for standardized tests. If you fill out the short survey in the chat, we can get you signed up for these deals for free. We would also like to draw your attention to another amazing program, Neolith. Neolith is an online mental health platform for students. For pre-health professionals especially, we know that this path isn't easy, and that's why we've partnered with Neolith to spread the word and offer free access to their services. So if you use the link in the chat or enter the code PREHEALTH when signing up. We also have a really cool fundraiser going on with Krispy Kreme. I know we all love donuts. So if you donate over $10, then you're eligible to get a free certificate for a dozen donuts at Krispy Kreme. We're going to drop a link in the chat and you can learn more about this fundraiser and order on our website. We also have another fundraiser going on with some PHS merchandise. So if you want to rep the program and show off to all your friends how awesome PHS is, then you can order from this. We're going to go ahead and drop the link in the chat for that as well. But some of the proceeds will go towards pre-health shadowing, and you'll get an awesome t-shirt or hoodie or whatever you decide to order. So feel free to check that out. We have also partnered with Mask for Mask, which is an amazing women-led organization that donates 4 masks for every 4 masks that they sell. And these go to people in need during COVID-19. So those in the homeless community, healthcare workers without proper PPE, and others who are struggling to stay safe. With our discount code PHS15, you can get 15% off your order. And if you buy through this method, Pre-Health Shadowing will also get 10% of the proceeds, which is super awesome because we're a nonprofit that runs solely on the support of our community. So this would mean a lot if you would check this out for us. If you would like to play a bigger part in supporting Pre-Health Shadowing, we would love for you to join our network of student volunteers and team members. You can apply to be a part of our administrative team and lead students in various projects and initiatives with professional outreach, grant writing, and more. We also understand that as pre-health students, we can be really busy and you may not have the time. So we also offer the opportunity to volunteer asynchronously with tasks that can be completed on your own time. We would love to have you be a part of our program and contribute your unique perspective. If you're a high school student and you want to get involved, we have started a program called HTP, High School Training for PHS, which allows you to connect with college pre-health programs, get involved in fundraising for PHS, and organize resources for other high school students interested in medicine through pre-health shadowing. We would love to recognize the hard work of all of our students in the program. So if you're interested in getting published, You can submit essays, reflections, research papers, and reviews to our editor-in-chief through the link dropped in the chat to have your work on our website. And this looks really great on CVs, applications, and resumes, so definitely check this out. Part of our mission here at PHS is to promote diversity, and in order to do this, we've launched an initiative to have monthly panels to celebrate different demographics in the field of medicine. Some of these upcoming events include a series on patient experiences, a COVID-19 roundtable, and an international student forum. If you have a mentor, professor, or professional that has inspired you and you think that they could contribute to these conversations, please nominate them today using the link in the chat. If you're able, we humbly ask that you donate to our program. As you know, pre-health shadowing is completely student-run, and we are working around the clock to keep this free and accessible to everyone. Unfortunately, Zoom and our website are not free, so any contribution that you can give would be greatly appreciated. If you're not financially able, we request that you send this link to someone that you think can donate so we can continue to support those who can't afford similar opportunities. Throughout the session today, we encourage you to drop any questions you have for the speaker in the chat. Our team members will be making note of these to be asked in the latter half of the session. Take good notes as our professional is going over their presentation, as there will be the chance to take a post-shadowing assessment to verify your virtual shadowing hours. More information will be available on this at the end of the session, so stay tuned. Lastly, if you can, we request that you turn your cameras on. This is by no means an obligation, as we are respectful of different circumstances, but it does help us to feel a little closer together in a time when socially distancing is mandatory. We also request that you make sure to mute yourself, as this will ensure the professional has the complete and full attention from the audience. I appreciate you guys for listening to me today, and now I would love to welcome our professional. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can go ahead and share your screen whenever you're ready.
Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Diane Allen-Gipson, and I'm going to be giving you a talk about my journey as a pharmacologist from the bench to academia. First, I wanted to let everyone know that I was born in a very small island in the Lesser Antilles called Grenada. Some of you may have heard of Grenada when there was an invasion in Grenada to get the medical students off of the island due to an invasion with Cuba and the communists. And our former President Reagan instilled that opportunity. When I was about 5 months old, I moved to the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, and that's where I was raised up until I was 16. But I got my first inspiration for pursuing a career in the medical field when I was about 5 years old. I was watching this show on TV, and it was called Julia. And it was on NBC. It was the first show in the 1960s where you see a Black woman in a role played as a nurse. This left a lasting impression on me. And I didn't know at that time, because I was only 5, what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go, but I knew it fueled my interest in science and in the healthcare. So my personal journey into becoming where I am now led me to move to Florida. And so I left St. Thomas in the little island, Caribbean islands, and flew into Tampa, Florida, of all places. And I came here when I was 16. So my mother enrolled me into HB Plant High School in Palmacia. And at that time, I met this gentleman named Dr. Richard Pry. They used to call him Papa Pry. And Papa Pry knew that he was the director and a CEO of a program called Upward Bound. Upward Bound is a program that helps high schoolers who have never been, in their whole entire family, have ever been to college. It is actually geared to underserved groups. And so he encouraged me to think about what I wanted to do with my education. And he, of course, his operation for his program was at the University of South Florida. So on the weekends, um, all the students that were in high school in Tampa will have an opportunity to go on campus, take classes, interact on the campus, and become fully aware of what a life is to have a higher education. So that's where my first motivation or academic influencer started. Upon graduating from Plant High School, I was accepted at USF. There, I was a biology major, go biology majors, and I was also thinking on the pre med track. So I was taking classes going on the pre med, pre health track. During that time, I got married, so I transferred to University of Central Florida in Orlando, where I completed my BS in biological sciences. And then I worked for a couple of years as a pharmacy technician. And while working as a pharmacy technician is where my other influence in my academic choice came. And so I decided to go ahead and get my master's at Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, which is a historical Black university, an HBCU. And I got my master's in pharmacology, toxicology, and I will explain a little bit about what those degrees are. And I end up obtaining my PhD in pharmaceutical science under a fellowship of the McKnight doctoral program. And that's a program that helps underserved minorities, African Americans, Black, Hispanic, or Latinos to get a higher education. And it pays for your full PhD. So you don't really have that debt. So I was able to do that and accomplish those goals. So, what is pharmacology? And so, pharmacology is the science that deals with drugs' effects, their nature, actions, mechanism of actions, the pharmacokinetics, which is how the drug is delivered into the body, and the therapeutics is how the drug is how it affects the body, and other uses and preparation and administration within the living body. Now, this cartoon on the side, and see if I can move the pictures that I have everybody here, um, is really interesting because, as you can see, pharmacology deals with drugs, right? So, what is drugs? Well, drugs is derived from the French word called duru, or dry herb. And drug is any type of chemical, that substance that can alter the body. And let's see, oops, pictures are in the way. They can alter the body and functions at the molecular level, and also it can prevent and treatments and prevention of and diagnosis. So all drugs can be used in society, either legal or illegal. That includes street drugs, prescription and non-prescription medication over the counter. So I love this cartoon and I kind of wanted to share it with everyone because, as you can see, we start taking drugs as early as when we were born, age 0 to 4. Typically amoxicillin, right? Because when we're that age, we're nothing but a petri dish of germs. So we take amoxicillin to block all of that bacteria that seems to be what we spread. By the time we are 4 to 12, our parents are kind of like, what is wrong with this kid? He's bouncing off the wall. We offer them Ritalin. Okay. By the time we're 12 to 18, we become very self conscious about how we look and how we want to be accepted into society. So we try taking appetite suppressants and different things like, you know, um, to help us stay trim and slim or stay up. Then by the time we go in college, we are definitely burning both ends of our candles and we use something like no dose. That's between 18 to 24. Now we're in our life and we're trying to decide what we're going to do at our career, have a family. We're kind of like this lady, kind of stressed. So sometimes we take Prozacs, and that's something that helps us deal with anxiety. By the time we get into this nice senior year, we can, the guys at least, they use the blue pill called the Viagra. right? And then when you're over 65, anything can work. It doesn't matter, right? So that's one of the things I loved about this cartoon. It depicts how drugs is used at every stage of our life. So pharmacology can be divided into different branches or division. It's very diverse. So pharmacology is typically broken down into the therapeutic portion, which is pharmacotherapeutic, and then the portion that is very important but hardly mentioned is the toxicology component. Just like you take anything, there's always a risk to benefit, and so the risks of some drugs can cause toxic effect. So when it's divided into the therapeutic part and toxicology, therapeutic part can be broken down also further into your pharmacokinetics, which leads to how the drugs is absorbed and distributed in your body and then eventually eliminated, and pharmacodynamics, which deals with how the drug affects the system and how it affects the cellular component as well. Now, pharmacology, as I said, is very diverse. And because it's very diverse, it can include various specialties. It can be involved in neuropharmacology, renal, dealing with neuropharmacology, dealing with the brain, renal pharmacology that deals with the renal system, and then endocrine pharmacology that deals with any metabolic disease, and then intra or inter pharmacology that deals with the mitochondrial and then the cellular components. So it's very diverse. So why is pharmacology so important? All right, we are considered problem solvers, right? And that's what we do. When I was going to grad school, I was told pharmacologist was nothing but a frustrated physiologist. And to some extent, that is true because we have to know the physiology of the system. But we're frustrated because we have to now use drugs to manipulate that system in the healthy way, which is the normal function way, the physiology way, and then in the pathophysiological way, the disease state. So are very interested in solving any kind of problems that can give life-changing solutions. And a pharmacologist work in a variety of settings there, which depends on their field, which I mentioned earlier, but they can work in industry, a big pharmaceutical sciences company where they can do research in a lab setting, or they can do it in a clinical trial and become a clinical pharmacologist, where they are making sure that the patient's well-being are their very first concerns to make sure that they don't have any severe side effects or toxic reaction to the drugs that they have in the clinical trial. So they're involved in research, they're involved in certain technology. Example, COVID, we used a nanotechnology approach for delivering the vaccine. And so pharmacologists are involved in that process in developing the technology that can deliver the drug uh, to the host, in this case, patients. And then, of course, we're involved in production of drugs, drug discovery. Those are all the things that we do. So my journey after I got my PhD left me at a crossroad. Do I go into industry or do I want to go into an academic setting or do I just want to do research? So one of the things I would encourage each and every one of you is that you find a international or national or conference to attend. And for my case, I went to the Federation of American Society of Experimental Biology, FASAB. And there they have different organizations that contribute to that meeting. And one of the organization was the American Society of Pharmacology and Experimental Therapeutics. And when I was there, I happened to go to one of the resources that they have for when you're graduating from, higher education. You want to know, do I go to industry? Do I work as a postdoctoral fellow? Or do I just go into academics? So they have those resources at these meetings. And so I attended those meetings, and then they have all these recruiters there that would interview you on site. So you have to put in your application where you want to go and who you're interested into going to. And that day I had 11 people who were interested in me because my application was submitted earlier. And the last person that I was even considering was the University of Nebraska Medical Center. I had opportunities to go to UCLA, and I was interviewed with Cornell and UAB, Dartmouth. But I really got a very great impression with Dr. Todd Wyatt because of his passion for research and the area that he was getting into. And so that's what he's another influencer in my career. Dr. Wyatt is a full professor, and he is a what you call a well, he has many hats, which I would tell you a little bit, but his role is dealing with agriculture and occupational hazards that is involved in every job that deals with lung injury. And so he's doing that type of work. And he is a director of the Agricultural Center at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. So while I was there, we had a very large group, and this is me looking under the microscope, and all their principal investigators were in the front, and they were. This is Dr. Wyatt, who was my mentor, but also my colleague, and this is our division chief and other colleagues, and this is all of what research is based on a team of efforts from everyone. We had postdocs, we had undergrad summer students in there, we had technicians. So it was a wonderful experience. I became a Husker, and this is how our buildings look like from just looking at it. And so I was there for 11 years until I got invited to come to USF. Dr. Kevin Sneed is the founding dean for our college. And in 2011, he recruited me to USF because we were starting a new college of pharmacy. So I am a founding faculty of that college. And so as a founding faculty, I did not know what was involved with starting a new college because I was in an established institution before. But starting a new college, you have to and learn, you have to build a curriculum. You have to find out what the university requires as well as what the accreditation body requires. And so I took this opportunity to open up my portfolio from just being 100% researcher and now becoming an academia and learning how to be a instructor or a professor, learning how to run a lab, and learning how to do service duties that requires a lot of administrative roles. So I became a member of the Moffitt Cancer Center as well. I'm a collaborate member there, and I'm also a member of the Tampa Bay Cancer Network. And so that's where my journey is now. I joined USF in October 2011, and I wear many hats. And I love this poetry because that's exactly what we do. But my favorite message came from Albert Einstein, where he said, "It is the supreme art of a teacher to awaken joys in being creative in expression and knowledge for their students." And so as a faculty here at USF, I am so proud to be a teacher, but I'm also proud to be a mentor, a coach. If I need to be a nurse when my students are having problems, I'll be their nurse and their therapist. I can be a comedian if they need that. I can be a zookeeper if they have any kind of problems with any of the rodents that we have in our lab. So we have lots of things that we wear while we are there at an academic setting. And it's fun because it's never a dull moment. It always changes. So now I'm gonna give you a day in life, a little bit of what I do at USF. This is my research interest. This is where my lab is located, and my lab is located on the Children's Shriners Hospital on USF. And And my office is also there as well, but our pharmacy program is in the Masani um, building. So I started off with one interest and built from a lot from there and branches out. So while I was in Nebraska, my interest was always on area injury and wound repair. And Nebraska, they had a very high population of individuals that were smokers that suffered with something called chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And with that comes asthma. So that was basically my core of my research. And so then I expanded it and started looking at how cigarette smoke exposure is including e-cigarettes now, and then using a modulating molecule called adenosine, which is the metabolic breakdown product of ATP, how that regulates wound repair in the lungs and retargets specifically as a pharmacologist the adenosine A2 receptors in airway injury. We also focus on how that molecule adenosine play a role with cigarette smoke in promoting non-small cell lung cancer. To develop new drug therapy as a pharmacologist, this is where our basis is on drug discovery. In addition to that, I may have mentioned it to some of the members of the program that we also have a master's program and we just submitted for our PhD program in nanomedicine. And so nanomedicine is a phenomenal area that is used in almost every field. Cosmetics is used for when we are using Fabry, that's using nanomedicine and nanotechnology. And now when we have our vaccine, we have nanomedicine, nanotechnology using for the COVID vaccine. So my interest is, of course, in some drug discovery, dealing with area injury and wound repair processes. And so we're also in employing nanomedicine and nanotechnology in our lab. And now, having that bench research, we need to start thinking about how we can translate all of that into the clinical setting. And so part of my lab is looking at community-based participatory research, where we go into the community and hear what the community needs. And based on what the community needs, we also partner with them and we do things to help reduce tobacco related diseases and cancer in a particular group of underserved group that have been affected. As we found out with COVID, African American community and Hispanics, or any person that's black or brown, have health disparities when COVID came about. And so our lab is looking at ways that we can improve the health equity in these particular groups. So let me tell you a little bit about the lung. So it's just some background. The lung is there to be to is a very vital organ for everyone. If we don't have the lung, we can't breathe, right? But it needs to be protected. Just like our skin is protected with the epithelium, the lung has a lung epithelium that protects it from pathogens and foreign particles getting into it. And so when that gets destroyed or disrupted, we have something on the epithelium called cilias, and they're like hair-like projectiles that works more like a mucociliary escalator, and their function is to remove any debris, any viruses, or anything that's toxic out of the lungs. And they do that with a combination of this mucus layer that is on the epithelium where things can get trapped, and having that ciliary or escalator type of movement, it moves it out of the lungs into our body so we can swallow it, and then it gets digested and get out of our system. But in the process, if it doesn't do that successfully, the body has its own way of protecting itself. And that's where the wound repair processes come in place. But lung repair is very complicated. It's not like how when you see a cut on your hand, you can just put some ointment on it, put a band-aid, and then tomorrow you see it scabbing and then it's gone. It's similar to that, but it's complicated in the set that it has a lot of different processes that work together in conjunction with each other, but sometimes dysfunctionality can occur. So an example, looking at this schematic diagram, if the epithelial cell is destroyed, it releases certain inflammatory mediators, which is like the SOS, something is wrong, let's see what's wrong. Those inflammatory mediators act like hormones, and they send messages to other white blood cells that are going to be recruited to that site of injury. The first white blood cell that is recruited is the neutrophils. There are EMTs. They come there and they try to see what kind of repair that they can do. And if they're not successful, the next set of cells that comes are the macrophages, which then are like the sweepers on the street. They come up there and they pick up the debris, engulf them, and take away all the things that may have been causing the damage. And then the T cells are there to produce our antibodies and help build our immune system. But while the injury is making those SOS, platelets are activated, and when they do that, they cause that clotting process to take place. So the clotting process takes place first, but yet the signaling comes there so they can have those inflammatory cells come in and do their work. But while they're there, they also send out certain cytokines or chemokines to recruit more cells to come to the site of injury, and basically they send out more inflammatory, pro-inflammatory cytokines like I1 beta, TGF beta, IL-13, and TNF alpha, which then recruits cells like the fibroblasts and the myofibroblasts, which then can lay down certain extracellular matrix. Like when you see on your surface of your skin, you start seeing it building a scab, but the scab is just the finishing part. It actually start making this invisible matrix that actually seals the wound. And once they do that, that matrix can be can go wrong as well. And when it does do that, you can have what they call fibrotic lesions. And that's what happens with a lot of individuals that were suffering with COVID. They were having a lot of extra zealous repair processes going on, and a lot of fibrotic lesion that can cause the lung no longer to be elastic and the person cannot breathe anymore. But if indeed it does lay the extracellular matrix down properly, wound repair can occur, tissue remodeling will happen, resolution, and then you have a healthy lung, as the picture depicts right there. So I like to share this cartoon with everyone. This is a gentleman who is a fireman, I guess. Excuse me. And he says, "Why, I smoked for years without any health problem." And all of a sudden he hears this hissing sound, because basically smoking is a time bomb. You know, when you're smoking, you really don't think you're causing any damage to yourself. But in reality, cigarette smoking or smoking of any kind of any substances is a progressive tissue injury process. And so I'm going to share some fun facts. When a person who smoke, their life expectation is lessened by 10 years. 9 out of 10 lung cases is due to cigarette smoke. What is really sad is that 5 million deaths are caused by cigarette smoke, but nearly 6 million are done from people who do not smoke, passive smoking, where they get exposed to cigarette smoke secondhand or third hand. So it is a public health concern, and that's the reason why I'm interested in doing it as well. Most of the individuals that start smoking, they start very early. They start when they're about 15. Now, a little statistics here, just so that you will be aware. This is a little outdated. This was from this Surgeon General report in 2014, where they were looking at the health consequences of smoking for over a 50-year process. So this is letting you know that roughly 450,000 people die from cigarette smoke in some form or the other. It could either be through lung cancer, it can be through heart disease, it could be through lung disease like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or strokes. And what was interesting is that today the gap is closer between male and female. for these diseases, and it contributes way, way more than over $300,000 deaths per year. Just before COVID hit, we were having a public health crisis. I don't know if everyone remember about the individuals where children, teenagers were, smoking, e-cigarettes, thinking it was, cool, and they end up what was called popcorn lungs, and exactly the lung looks like popcorn. Everything become um, crushed up and is not viable. And this injury caused a lot of death in young individuals. And so it became a health issue where, in Texas and California, the dark green is showing over 250 cases where young individuals were dying. And it's true, it was not cigarette smoke. It was contents inside the liquid that they use. So our lab is very much interested in conducting research looking not only at cigarette smoke, but also at vaping because it does cause lung injury. So here's some of the things that we do in the lab. We actually can make a cigarette smoke extract, a liquid form of cigarette smoke, using the research graded Kentucky research cigarettes that are approved by the National Institution of Health, and we would take that and use a peristaltic pump and pump it into our medium. And this medium would either be the medium that we use to grow our cells, or it can be in a medium that is like a saline solution, very neutral. And we filter it because, of course, it has a lot of particulates and parts that might be toxin to the cells. And we want to make sure that we use a concentration that we can see an immediate effect from using it on our system, and not just a death effect. We can cause the cells to die by putting a high concentration of this extract. So we use around 5% for the epithelial cells, and then we use a lower concentration for cells that are hitting from the surface because they're more sensitive. So we have to use a lesser concentration. We grow cells, and our cells that we're using are human bronchial epithelial cells. That could come from patients, or they come from a cadaver and have been more immortalized. And we grow our cells in the cigarette smoke. So we actually have a immortalized cell line that we call a lung chronic lung treatment with cigarette smoke, and that's all they have. They have the media that gives them their nutrients, but they only get cigarette smoke 24/7, and they've been doing that for about 3 to 5 years now. We have animals in our lab. We use the C57 black mice as our background, and we actually knock out, use genetic manipulation in our mice and knock out the adenosine A2A and A2B receptors. And so we also knock out the CD73, which is an ecto nucleotidases that generates adenosine in our mice as well. So we use those mice as a way to prove of concept how that particular gene of interest is playing a part in the wound repair processes. We sometimes expose our animals to cigarette smoke, and we use a teak machine. This machine is automated, so it lights up the cigarettes, and the animals get exposed to the cigarette for about 2 hours with about 80 cigarettes at a time. And there are also some that are not exposed to cigarette smoke and they're exposed to air. And we do a small experiment for 6 weeks so we can get an inflammatory response to see what kind of injury was done. We have extended this up to six months to kind of give us a chronic obstructive pulmonary disease phenotype, which the mice would not actually have. It'd be more emphysemic. And so we have done that as well. And currently we have the Joule e-vaping. And so we're using that on our mice as well as on our cell culture. But the whole purpose of all the research as a pharmacologist is about drug discovery and drug development. And so some of the things that we're doing is looking at nanotechnologies, how we can target the cigarette's content, such as tar and the nicotine. The other things that we do is microanalysis arrays. So we look at certain genes and see what genes are being changed through epigenetic methylation, DNA methylation, or looking at the regulatory RNA, the microRNA. And then we also look at our long term model where we have our in vitro model that are changing its phenotypic activity and function to look more like the cancer cells. So we're actually doing a lot of exciting things. And the last thing that we do in our lab is we do look at natural uh, reagents, such as marigold. And marigold it is known for its wounding properties. So we extract the tincture, and we use that as a way for us to do more research. And USF has a botanical garden that we actually can get certain plants and use the tincture, and we have HPLC and analyze a lot of things. So we do a lot of drug discovery in my lab. So as a scientist, it would not be fair for me to just share all of what I have done without actually trying to share how you can be successful in your career choices. So we do our experiments, and we always do our experiments based on several variables. And for me, I have certain variables that I think are very important for your success. There include the control variable, which is something that you will keep the same throughout your academic health bound career or journey. And then there's an independent variable. And there's usually one variable that you would purposely change and test. And then you have your dependable variable. And your dependable variable is like your outcome, your measurements of how these changes would be dictated when you do your independent. So it's a way of measuring your independent um, variable. So I'm going to share with you um, my particular um, variables. And like this cartoon said, you have the rest of your life to either decide if you're going to be average or if you're going to have a memorable career journey. So my control variable started when I went to HB Plant, but it actually started when I was 5, watching that show on TV. I wanted to focus on obtaining a higher education. I don't know what it was. My independent variables were either medicine, pharmacy, or basic science research. And then my dependent variables were passion, desire, tenacious, perseverance, patience, and open mindedness. But for all of these things to happen, I have to have a hypothesis. And so my hypothesis was stem on the fact that in order to maintain a higher education, I must remain focused and have a mentality to succeed. So I'm going to ask you guys in a few minutes to tell me what your uh, variables are. And that's going to be in the chat in a few minutes. But before we can proceed to any kind of experiments, you have to have your materials and your methods in place. And this is a wonderful recipe for success written by Kenneth R. Henna in 1958. And here are the ingredients that I would suggest you need to have. You need 4 cups of intelligence. You also need 1 1/4 cup of shifted initiative, 1 1/2 cups of responsibility, 3 cups of ambition, 2 cups of open mindedness, 2 cups of unbeaten patience, 1 quart of understanding, 2 cups of cooperation, 1 cup of tactfulness, 2 1/2 teaspoonful of attitude, 4 cups of ability, and a dash of judgment. So now once you gather all of your ingredients together at room temperature or body temperature, shift your intelligence and ambition and understanding together, mix cooperation, attitude, and open-mindedness until dissolve. And then add gradually the ability, tactfulness, responsibility, stir initiative and judgment thoroughly, beat your patience until smooth, because that is one of the hardest thing for every one of you and myself. Blend all your ingredients well, sprinkle liberally with cheerfulness, and bake in an oven of determination. When absorbed thoroughly, cool, and spread with common sense. Once you have that, you have your recipe for success. So I think in the chat, they should have placed in there your comments about what were your independent variable, control variable, and dependent variables are. These are just some tips I wanted for you to have for your journey as you're going onto your career choices. Whatever it is, if you want to be just get your diploma, if you want to go into a lab and do bench research, or if you want to be a health professional as a pharmacist, a doctor, a physician assistant, a nurse, this is your opportunity to do that. And I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. It was really cool to hear more about your experience and your journey through pharmacology. It's always so nice to hear from our health professionals. So I love to invite the students here to ask questions for themselves. So if you have a question and you would like to ask Dr. Allen-Gipson yourself, please use the raise hand function. You can find this on the reactions button, the raise hand, and go ahead and do that. And then I will call on you and invite you to unmute yourself. Until then, I don't see that we have any takers. I can go ahead and ask some questions that we've pulled from the chat. And again, just feel free at whatever time, if something sparks your mind and you have a question, to please raise your hand, because I love to get it a little interactive and have you guys be able to talk to a professional yourself. So to start off, we had a question about, you said that you started off your undergrad with pre-med in mind. So what made you, change and decide pharmacology over medicine?
Well, I became a mom. I think that was a big decision in my pre-med direction. I do know that demands of being in medicine was really rigid. And so, being a mother of two kids, I decided that I wanted to do something that I can have a little bit of quality of life with my children. And being a pharmacologist, you do have that. You can work from home, you can work in a lab, you can work anywhere with your pharmacology degree. So, that gave me that flexibility that I wanted.
Awesome. Yeah, I know work-life balance can be so difficult in all of the health professions, and it's something that everyone's always talking about. So it's great to hear kind of a different perspective, and know that it is possible and that there are careers that allow that for you. Could you also talk a little bit about what the curriculum is like for pharmacology school and kind of the student experience?
Yeah. So most of a pharmacologist need is a PhD in that grade. In for becoming a pharmacologist, you need a PhD, and it could be in pharmaceutical sciences, as that's very general. So it can include medicinal chemistry, it can include pharmacokinetics, but you need to have a PhD. But you do need to have the background as well. So they look for students to have a biology or chemistry background, because chemistry is going to be critical because you're developing drugs, right? So as a drug discovery, you have to understand the chemical components of it. But even if you have a biology degree, you still will be able to understand, because part of your biology degrees, you have to learn chemistry. So as far as a student is an activity, um, when you're in a graduate program, it's just like being it's like being in undergrad, but it's a little bit more accelerated. You have no options of making C's in graduate program. You have to make B's or above. You also are more independent, When you are in undergrad, you had a lot of directions pointing you, but you had a sense of independence as well. Well, in a graduate level, you become independent, and you're not going to be given the directions to how to get that independence. You have to then use a lot of your critical thinking at this point to see how you solve a problem, because you're becoming a problem solver yourself. So you have mentors, you have a chair of your committee that will provide feedbacks and kind of give you guidance, but you're actually taking the lead of your discipline. There are standard courses required that you have to fulfill for pharmacology, medicinal chemistry, or pharmaceutics, that you have to take as standard core courses. And then when you finish taking those courses, there's something called qualifiers. So you have to qualify to become a PhD candidate. And that qualifying exam could be questions that are all over the field, but you may not know about it. So you need to understand your field very well, because they can ask you any kind of question and you have to pass. And it's also oral as well as written. Once you get your qualifiers, then you become a PhD candidate. And at that point, you do your research and then you defend it at the end. And so when you defend your dissertation, it is published by the university, and then you become a doctor in philosophy for whatever you decided your field was going to be in. There is group of help now. You can't do this by yourself, even though your journey is by yourself. And so you can have the graduate program has different ways to help students through the program so that they don't feel overwhelmed, because it is at a graduate level. Now, that's the graduate level where you can get a PhD in pharmacology. But you can also become a pharmacologist without actually having a PhD. And that happens if you went to a professional program and get your professional degree in pharmacy or even in medicine. And you can actually get trained on the job to do what a pharmacology does by the fact that you have that knowledge about drugs. A pharmacist know about drugs, right? And a doctor knows about drugs. And so they can help understand the mechanism of action of the drugs and start helping with others to develop drug discovery. So it does help to have that professional degree, because you can end up becoming a pharmacologist by doing the type of work a pharmacologist does.
That's so awesome. I had no idea that you could kind of make that like lateral move over to another profession if you're interested. That's really, really cool.
Mhm. A
Um,
lot of clinical trials that are being done are run by clinical pharmacologists, but they're also being done by doctors who are trained as clinical pharmacologists. So it's an open field. It's not nothing is you cannot do this. You can always expand your career.
awesome, awesome. I see we have a student wanting to ask their question. So Shamal, if you would love to unmute yourself, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just a really quick question because you mentioned dissertation. I haven't applied to a PhD school yet or graduate school yet, but it just popped into my mind. Is this something where like you create your own thesis and defend it, or is it something where you go in with an advisor and then you help defend it, while doing your dissertation? If that
That's a
question makes sense.
that's a very good question, Shamal.
Okay.
For me, I had an option to create my own dissertation project or use what was in the lab per se. And I think when it just depends on your relationship that you have with your mentor or your dissertation chair that you have for your committee. In my case, we talked about the different areas that I wanted to go into, and in my graduate program, I was looking at mast cell degranulation and how the mast cells affect the lungs and cause individuals to be inflame and have asthmatic attacks. So I always was doing things in the lung. And my mentor was a immunologist, so she had things dealing with the immune system. So we combined our interests and did my dissertation would combine communication, her specialty, my interest, and we did it together. So you can do it like that. Or if some students just need guidance and they need someone to point them in a direction to do a project, they can be projects that are already established in that lab, and they can actually do their dissertation based on those projects. So I prefer doing the latter, the first one that I tell you, where you communicate with the mentor and you kind of have an idea that what you want to do. Because when you have a passion to do your research, especially in a graduate program, it's really makes it goes easier. Rather than doing something that is already established, you have to learn that process, and then you have to kind of figure out, is this something that I really care about, really want to do? So I think it's best that you talk to the person that you're going to choose to go into the lab to work with, and let them know what your interest is and see if they're willing to work and combine a little bit of what you want and a little bit of what they're doing to bring in a project. I hope I answered your question.
Yep, it works. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Another question that we had was, could you talk about your experience at an HBCU compared to, attending like a predominantly white institution like you did in undergrad?
They're different, that's for sure. Yes, I can talk about that. So I purposely did this though. I could have gone anywhere else to get my PhD, but I purposely did that because I came from the Caribbean, and being an immigrant, I guess that's the best way to say it, there was cultural differences between someone who's from the Caribbean and someone who's an African American in the United States. And I wanted to actually understand the historical component about that. And so that was one of the reason why I went. The other reason was um, I met a mentor who was really stimulating me about graduate program, and he was at Florida A&M University. So those are the two reasons. But they're definitely different because in the majority school, it's the best way of doing it. It's very big. And you could be in a classroom. When I was going to school, we had like 300 students in the class. And the student identifier was your student number, right? And so the only way that the teacher know who you were is through your identifier number, and then unless you make an appointment to meet with them in person. When you go to HBU, it's very small. It's more intimate, and you have that relationship building with the instructor that they know who you are, and you had more of a one-on-one relationship because it's not such a huge program. But it also was a cultural shock for me because I was learning the different cultures that is in an African American community versus in a majority. I actually love both, so I think it's a great experience if you want to see. They have the same academic rigors as a majority school, even more because they expect excellence because you are a minority and they want you to be 100% your best. So the rigor is really hard, but at the same time, it was more personal, more intimate. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your experience there. I also had another question. Did your research change a lot due to COVID? Like, for example, did you, kind of switch gears and like start looking at lung problems from COVID, or did you stick to cigarette smoke?
No, my lab has expanded since COVID. Yeah, and we actually are collaborating with several labs looking at the S protein from COVID and looking at how that S protein play a part in the injury that resulted from the virus, as well as the cytokine storm that is one of the reasons why people do so poorly is because so much pro-inflammatory cytokines are released that there's nothing but flood of inflammation and fluid build up in the lungs that they eventually die from pneumonia. And so we're looking with other labs on that as well. As far as productivity, we're still looking at cigarette smoke and its injury, but we're also looking at how COVID is affecting individuals that have cancer or any kind of comorbidities related to cigarette smoke exposure. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I know that, so many people really had to change. And it's something that was like very inspiring for me to see just during this pandemic, that everybody came together, like the scientific community really banded together to try to solve this problem. So it's really interesting to hear like how things changed because of this.
Oh, that's what science is all about. It's all about evolving and changing as life is changing itself to solve the problem. So it's a great experience, and we did a lot of rapid research and got funded for doing COVID research during this time. Uh, I worked virtually, and I had someone in my lab that was doing the work for me. So it was really great.
Thanks. Another question that we had was, is there anything that was unexpected in your career? Like anything that you didn't necessarily expect that you would do as a pharmacologist?
I think we always have unexpected things that we're going to do. And like I said, when I was in Nebraska, I was 100% research, totally research. And then coming to an academic setting, you wear multiple hats. And then I did not know that I will be in a position of leadership. So one of the things that I was fortunate to be, I became the faculty council president for our college. And that was unexpected. I didn't think I was capable of being in a leadership position. And since then, I am the research chair for the research committee for our college, and I'm also the chair elect for the University Research Council. So that's an unexpected journey, because you go to school to solve problems, you be a scientist, you stay in the lab, and next thing you know, you're in a leadership position where you're influencing others and you're trying to make decisions that can help implement new type of approaches and policies for healthcare. So to me, that is also unexpected, but it's also welcoming, but scary at the same time, because you're becoming this person that you never knew you can do.
Yeah, that's very true. Another question that I had was, do you just have like a favorite part and a least favorite part of your job? So kind of like the highs and the lows.
Oh, yes, there's always highs and lows in everything that we do. That's life, right? I think the highest part is when a project works, we get funded, and we can implement something out of it so it can actually be added to the body of the scientific community. The low part or the value part of it is the time that you have to sit down and write grants, and you have to be persuasive, and you have to make sure the information that you're trying to convince NIH or any of the federal funding agencies like National Science Foundation, the National Institution of Health, the National Heart, Lung, and Blood, that you want their money. And so you have to be very persuasive in writing those 6 to 12 page document that have supporting evidence, which is your data. Those are the low point, because you really spend a lot of time doing those, to when the review committee gets together, they say, oh, it just was not good enough to get funded. And then you have to start all over again. But that's part of the job. But everybody doesn't like to be told, your work is not good enough to be funded. So we still don't, we grind our teeth, we say kind of things that we don't want to repeat, and then we go right back and grind ourselves back to writing another grant and submitting it until we get funded. So yeah, that's the downside.
Yeah, definitely a lesson in perseverance and just keeping going. We do obviously on a smaller scale, right? Grants here at PHS to try to get funding here. So there's a little plug for everyone here. If you want to get some experience writing grants, we have lots of volunteer opportunities for that. And it's definitely a good skill to have.
It is a very good skill to have because while you were in grad school, they did not tell you to take an English class, right? And so you're taking all these hard science and you're doing everything for your dissertation. But really, you need to have an English background because you have to be very articulate and persuasive when you're writing a grant because it's not the same way of writing a reflective paper. It's not. So I would suggest if you have friends that are English majors, become real close friends with them. You have to start writing grants and papers. In academic, is publish or perish is one of the things that they say. And when you publish, it's a form of productivity. And so that's another thing that the NIH or any of the funding agencies look at is not only writing the grant and getting it funded, but how productive you are in the lab. And that's where you publish your work and the scientific community can acknowledge your work and its peer review. So those are real key things that you need to be doing. And so writing becomes a critical part of your career as well.
Yeah, that's something that's really good to hear. I think that it's so easy to kind of like go down the rabbit hole of hard sciences and like beefing up your resume and not take that time to really like be well-rounded and focus on like liberal arts or humanities. So I think that it's really important to kind of like get your foot wherever you can and really get that experience.
It is. I would encourage anyone to do that.
Another question that we had was your experience transitioning from the Caribbean to the United States. Like, how was that? And, you know, were there any big culture shocks or things that you experienced?
Yes, there was a lot of culture shock. Extremely culture. Like the Virgin Islands is always hot. And so when we moved into Florida, thinking Florida was going to be warm, we moved into when Florida had one of the worst winters and it was really cold. Now, cold for us in the island was 70 degrees. So when I experienced 40 degrees, that was cold, but that was just temperature shock. But culture shock, yes. Um, in the Caribbean, people know each other more of a personal because it's such a small island. And coming to America, people are just, you know, big. And so people are not always, I'm not saying friendly, but it's just that they're not, um, I would say good morning to people and they would say, well, what's so good about the morning? You know, so it was like we always greet people with good morning and hi, how are you? And then it was a different way of how people communicate. And that was different for me to approach people differently. I was very, in everybody's face. Hi, how are you? Da, da, da. Because in the islands, we're all that way. And then here in America, you kind of stand off until you get to know a person and then they welcome you in because it's so big, but there's little groups of people that can make a difference. And that's what I had to learn when I came here, that it's not just because they're not very approachable. It was because it's such a huge melting pot of different people that came from different backgrounds that I had to learn to adapt to that. Coming from a small island where everybody know everybody. When I went to school and I get in trouble, by the time I get home, my mom, my grandma, my dad, everybody knew because everybody already told them. So in the Highlands, it was really small. That's it. And then of course the food. I had to get used to a different food.
Yeah, that's very true. I can say that, I always love when somebody's very upbeat and friendly. I think it really changes the mood. So I appreciate your upbeat personality and I try to be friendly as well, but definitely a lot of people can be standoffish.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest thing that I had to deal with because we grew up and we hug people when we meet them. We hug them and kiss them on the cheek. And so I would greet people and hug and want to kiss them and people, oh, well. Like, don't you touch me. So I had to learn to use handshakes. So that was totally different for me.
It's funny. It's something that, it's so natural for us that that's our way of greeting, but it's funny to hear how different places can be. Another question we had was, who was your biggest supporter on your career path? Like, was your family really supportive? Did you have really supportive friends?
My biggest supporter was my mom and my grandma. They were motivating me to do whatever I want because I was the first person in my family to go this far in my education. And I also was a girl. So they were my biggest motivators. And my mother would always tell me, "Are you sure you want to do this? You could be a teacher. You could do anything else." And she would stay up with me while I'm studying till wee in the morning, but she would fall asleep just so she could keep my company. And my grandma would always make sure I was eating because I would never tend to eat when I study. I would just be so focused. So they were my biggest supporters in getting my accomplishing my goals.
I love hearing about that female power. Definitely something that is so important to me as well. And it's so good to hear from, women in the scientific field and about how women have always empowered them to keep going. You mentioned that you're a mom. Does your child, are they interested in science? Like, do they kind of like look up to you and want to do that as well?
They're far from science. I wanted them to do science too. And I think my youngest at one time made me felt really great about that because he was thinking about being a marine biologist. And I love, I wanted to be an oceanographer before I wanted to be a pharmacologist. But that changed really quick when they had to do the math and science portion. So all of my kids have done something in a different field. It's business or um, graphic art. And one is a minister. So yeah, it's just totally different.
I feel like that's always how it works out. Like I'm the same way. My parents are an accountant and an entrepreneur, and they think I'm honestly crazy for wanting to go into science. So it's funny how it works out like that. But maybe it will skip a generation and you'll get some grandkids going into science.
Maybe.
um, on that same vein of, being interested in oceanography and being outside, what are your hobbies outside of work and research? Like, do you have the time to travel? What do you do for fun?
Well, when we were able to travel, I like traveling internationally so I can see other culture. I really embrace other cultures and I want to know as much as I can. And so I went to Copenhagen in Spain and Canada. I just like finding out how other people live. I also love music. And so I love every kind of music. I don't have any particular genre because I just, like I said, I embrace other cultures. So I take on country, rhythm and blues, everything, Christian, it's just as long as it's music and the language is about love, I really don't care. I just want to make sure I can have that kind of vibe in my life because I like to stay as positive as I can. And then I like to read nonfiction books, so that I can explore my imagination and stop thinking about science sometimes and just read about, I'm big on action movies, so my reading is always going to be on a murder mystery, love triangle kind of thing like that. So that it's always something that's still solving something, but it's now in a human side versus always a scientific approach.
Awesome. I apologize if you hear my dogs in the background. They are barking like crazy right now. Um,
No worries.
Speaking of being a reader, do you have like a favorite book that you could recommend us?
Um, Gosh, I wasn't anticipating that because I read Christian Fegan, her series. I like to look at the series that deal with the Carpathians. So, but not everybody likes those. So Kristen Fegan is my author that I like, and then no, I don't have one that I can tell you because I wasn't prepared for that because I read so many different books, and then they just interest me at the time. But I do read all our Kristen Fegan's books, So if you want to look her up, she has a bunch of series of, supernatural, scientific, dealing with military soldiers that have different, um, they were either given some type of species or some type of genetic manipulation to make them strong. So those are the kind of things I read.
I
But of
love
course,
that.
there's always good books to read that deals with empowering. But I try to balance myself a little bit from not always being so serious, and get something that could be more, rewarding.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. Sorry to put you on the spot. I'm always looking for new book recs, so I'll definitely look that up. Another question that we had is, what is your experience with burnout? And do you have any tips on like how to avoid being burnt out in your profession?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And it's not only just in my profession, I think it's in everybody's profession, and everybody would experience it at some time. Especially now with the COVID, that really was a very testing time for everybody. And everybody experienced that burnout feeling because we were all virtually in front of a computer every day, and we're not really moving around or interacting with everybody. So that was one of the signs that we saw a lot of our students dealing with burnout. Recommendations that we tell the students, and I tell my mentees or my coaches, is not to stay in front of the computer extensively like they have to. And the fact that if you have the option to not have your classes live, and you have the option that it's recorded, take that time to use that recorded time at a leisure time for you to get into um, into your coursework. But take breaks, multiple breaks. It's very hard when you're in front of a computer like that. Now, as far as me and my career journey, there have always been areas of my careers where I question whether or not this is the right career choice for me, because I was getting burned out. And that usually comes at certain peaks when you have lots of deadlines, when they all seem to come in all at one time. Graduation is a very busy time for a lot of faculties, because we have to make sure all of the grades are in, the students are either, you know, successfully passing all of their courses. And then we have to be preparing for all the things that go for graduation. So there's a lot of behind the scenes that faculty have to do for making sure that the students can graduate. And that could be overwhelming. And at that time, you may feel a little burnt out. But the best thing to do is take a vacation. Take a few days. If you have um, personal time, take 1 or 2 days out of the week and take a vacation from work, so that you can just recharge yourself. If you need to just go um, to a hotel away from everybody and just take that time to refresh yourself, do that. Read a book, take long walks, walk your dogs. I used to take my dogs for 3-hour walks. Those is how I get all of my stress out. And my dog was really happy, because by the time that he came home, all he did is went to sleep. But it was a way for me to relax and just look at nature and not really worry about work or anything like that. So just do things that keep you physically active and happy.
I love that. Taking breaks, that really resonates with me coming off of final exams. It can get so crazy. Like there were days I didn't even leave my apartment.
Mhm.
And it is definitely important to like schedule in that time. That's something that I started doing, is literally like putting it on my planner, like go do something,
Exactly.
go on a walk,
Just
get
10
out of here.
minutes. If you anything, 10 minutes would make a difference.
Yes, very true, very true. We are reaching the end of our session today, so I would love to just ask if you have any last minute advice for us before your session is over.
I would always say wake up with something on your mind all the time. Don't wake up not thinking that you're not going to do anything. Wake up with something on your mind. Excuse me if I sound a little stuffed, but wake up with something on your mind and do it. Even if it might be something that make you feel uncomfortable, do it. And even if you think you didn't do it right, know that you did it, and that's what counts. So that's my advice.
I love that advice. Definitely like having a plan can
Yes.
really just change the course of your day. So I love
Exactly.
that.
Yes.
So next up for us is just going to be our quick wrap-up presentation where we go over how you guys can get your quiz to certify your virtual shadowing hours. So at this time, Dr. Allen-Gipson, I do invite you to log off because this will not be something that's super pertinent to you, but thank you again so much for this wonderful session. It has been so great to hear from you and learn from you. I think we've all learned a lot.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great day. So to all of the students here, we would love to encourage you to just reflect on this session today and think about what brought you here, what are 3 major takeaways that you got from this presentation, and what would you like to learn more about? Did anything really spark your interest? This writing is not required at all, but we do encourage you to submit it to our website for publication and recognition of your hard work and to enhance your future applications if you choose to do this writing. If you would like to learn more about pre-health shadowing and get involved in our program, we do encourage you to visit our website. You can become an asynchronous volunteer to get certified hours through professional nominations, graphic design, and social media promotion, and more. We're also accepting team member applications. So if you'd like to take a more active role in PHS and lead your own projects and initiatives and even be up here with us leading live sessions, then please apply. We once again humbly ask that you donate to our program if you are financially able. Even just a few dollars via Venmo or PayPal can really make the difference for us. It does cost a lot to keep our program up and running, but it's really important to us that we keep this free for all of you. So if you're someone who can afford to, or if you know someone who can, please support those who can't afford it by donating to our organization so everyone can continue to get the education they deserve. Otherwise, we simply ask you to spread the word about pre-health shadowing to reach as many students as possible. And now for the part that we've all been waiting for, earning a digital certificate for your virtual shadowing hours from the session today. The first thing that you're going to want to do is visit our website and find our professionals course page. Next, you'll take the 10-question multiple choice quiz based on the content from the session today. You'll have 30 minutes per attempt to earn a 70% or higher to get your certificate. We know that sometimes technology can be difficult, and for this reason, we do allow 2 attempts to take the assessment. But if you run into any difficulties, please contact us. To ensure that our website does not crash from a high influx of students, we recommend waiting 30 minutes to an hour after this session ends to actually take the quiz. And that quiz will be open indefinitely. So you could even take it a day from now, a week from now, whenever you want. Once you've passed, you can click the Finish Course button at the bottom of the professionals page and download your certificate verifying your virtual shadowing hours. If you missed any part of this session or you want to go back and view other sessions to earn more certificates with verified virtual shadowing hours, you can go to our YouTube channel and watch our previous recordings. You can also find them via the professional page on our website and take the post-shadowing assessments for all of these as well. Be sure to follow us on social media or subscribe to our email list for the latest updates on upcoming sessions and events. We're currently booked every weekday through June for virtual shadowing sessions, and I hope to see you guys there. Right now, I'm also going to release some quick polling questions about some opportunities that we have going on right now. And so these are just in regards to our awesome fundraisers that we have going on. So remember that if you donate at least $10, you can get a free certificate for a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts, which are amazing. And it's a really great way to support our program and get something for yourself. And remember that we also have a merchandise fundraiser going on. So if you're interested in repping PHS and showing off your involvement in this organization, that's another way that you can support us and is a great fundraiser for us. So I would love to thank you all for joining us today. And if you have any questions for us, please feel free to stick around and we will hang out at the end of the session to answer any questions that you have. The shadowing session is officially over, so I invite you all to log off, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.